Hey you, yeah, you, the one trying to make a video game. I've got someone here that can help you, and that someone is Intel, which is not a someone, it's a company. But this company, they are going to help you as if they were a somebody and a someone and also a something. Check out software.intel.com/gamedev to find out how Intel is making sure all the innovation in gaming continues to happen on the PC as part of the Intel Game Dev program. Again, that URL is software.intel.com/gamedev. Sign up and start something new. GamesBeat is looking back as part of our GamesBeat Rewind feature, where we're going to be doing a bunch of Game of the Year award categories, our full top 10 countdown later this week. You can check back for all that stuff. We're also doing all kinds of different articles and features looking back at the year that was. This right here that you're listening to, this is the podcast where we're going to kind of start really actually diving into the real categories. We've already done the non-awards. Now we're going to actually get into the conversations about a lot of games we like, a lot of companies that are putting out these games in two major categories that we're talking about today. The first category is going to be the best gaming company of 2017. The second category is freshest new gaming universe. We'll sort of get into how we define those things as we talk about them. But we could start off first thing. We could just jump right in with people introducing themselves. I'm Jeff Grubb, your host. With me is Mike Minotti. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, I think that these are two pretty slam dunky ones, so I'm excited for these topics.
Yeah, I picked them today because we do have to get Stephanie out of here in a little bit, in like an hour. So I'm like, we could probably do these in an hour. And now I know that we've said that.
I can do these in 2 minutes.
Now that we've said this out loud, Mike, get ready, buckle up, because it's going to be a shitfest. I guarantee it.
No.
Okay, no. Also with me, Stephanie, say hi.
Hello.
And Jason Wilson, bringing up the rear.
Oh.
Say hi, Jason.
Oh, I'm the Rear Admiral of the podcast?
Yeah, Rear Admiral. Yeah, sure, if that's how you want to put it. If that's what the kids are calling it these days.
That's what the cool kids call it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is the GamesBeat crew. We're missing a few people. Dean is out. He'll be with us for the full Game of the Year countdown on Friday. But yeah, I think we should probably just jump right into it so we don't waste too much time. Best game company. I guess before we dive into it, does anyone have anything, what does this mean to you? When you look at a game company, what would you want to call out so that we can maybe define some things for people here?
I think you have to look at each company and the things they do and just see how good of a year they did. So if they're just a developer, how well they did at being a developer. If they're also a publisher, how well they did at developing and publishing. Or if they're those things and also a console maker, how well they did all of those aspects, right?
Yeah, and especially if people are also trying things new, I think is something I'd like to.
Yeah, trying things. I think there's that. There's like a critical barometer. There's also like an actual sales barometer, like how that stuff is translating. Like, is it actually like helping the company? Things like that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like you hear the company's name and you're immediately interested. Like, this company has proven a track record, whether it's publishing or developing, to know quality and to bring quality to players. And as soon as you hear it, you're like, okay, I'm interested.
For me, it's, what company made the games or the systems, if it's going to be hardware, that left an impression on me all year, from when I first started thinking about it in the beginning of the year to now. And it's not always about sales, although sales tend to go hand in hand with that, because I look at a couple of ones I suggested and they had really good sales.
Yeah, here and there. Actually, that brings us to the nominees. I think we can actually just start listing these right up front so people know where we're coming from. I'll just read this list down all the way from beginning to end. Nintendo, Ubisoft, Blizzard, Annapurna Interactive, Bethesda, In Exile, Sega Atlas, and Devolver Digital. I know a couple really stand out immediately from there. But I think maybe we should start with some of the indie companies. Steffi, why don't you give us Annapurna, and then I'll do Devolver Digital, because I think I don't want to say like these companies have to justify being mentioned alongside Nintendo, because I really don't believe that. But I want to give them their chance up front to really make their case. So why don't you start with Annapurna?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've been around for like basically a year, I think, and they already have such a great catalog. What Remains of Edith Finch is terrific. It just won a Game Award for Best Narrative, I think, and it's just super memorable. Like really great characters and just like innovative gameplay. And then just the rest of the titles, like Donut County, that's upcoming, kind of that Katamari playing as a black hole kind of thing. The Artful Escape, another really like aesthetically standout title. Gorogoa, which is coming out later this month, I think later this week actually. And I just think that they've really proven to have this keen eye towards new titles that are exciting, tell great stories, and also just look visually spectacular.
That's very similar to how I feel about Devolver. I think both of these companies are showing that there is a place, not just a place, but there's like a need in the market for companies that are not coming at it from the biggest budgets and not coming at gaming from this idea that it has to be the most profitable venture for their shareholders in the world. I think Devolver, just like Annapurna, has established a voice. Like it has a voice where you're like, oh, Devolver Digital is publishing this game. I actually know what that means for the game that I'm going to be playing. Whenever it comes out, it's gonna be loud and brash, and it's gonna have just lots of style. It could be violent, but it's gonna be violent with a sort of a colorful edge to it. These are all things I think you can associate with every single one of its games, to the point where when you hear the name Devolver, I get excited now.
The other thing I like about Devolver is the studio and its representatives have a real sense of humor about what they do.
Absolutely.
It's not like when you go see a game from a mid-tier or major publisher where it's all serious unless it's a comedy game. Like, Ubisoft was never serious about South Park when it presented it to you because it's South Park. But other games, they're dead ass serious about it. But with Devolver, they recognize that they have a very different attitude. They've got their mascot figurehead, but Fork Parker, who's like the demented Colonel Sanders of video games, and they just make it fun and silly, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think a lot of these indie publishers, like Devolver and also Raw Fury, whenever you get a press release from them, it just kind of feels like they're just as excited as the developers for this title to come out. Like they're just telling you sort of the way a friend would tell you like about this new thing that fits their vision of what they want their library to look like. And it's just like it just kind of makes you feel good. I think it's just like a lot of fun to hear about it, and that it's probably going to be quality because it's coming from them. Whoa, something's going on with the video.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was actually going to put the list up in the middle of the video so that people can kind of, if they're watching the video, they can watch along as we start making the list. So yeah, for these companies, I mean, we can definitely leave them on there for now. I do think it is sort of something I always feel about the gaming industry, not just people making games, people covering games, like websites. A lot of it is like the music industry in terms of you're building out personalities, and you're building out bands. These bands have their voice, and they have a music genre that they're experts in, and they go out and they have their fans, and they play to their fans. And I think that's where Devolver and Annapurna are coming from. They get that, and they know that they can build an audience by approaching video game in that way. But it also feels like they're also indie bands playing in a stadium setting, which maybe is not fair. But I both these companies are worth calling out, at least for now. Let's see if they do get knocked out by some of these other ones. I think what we could do is, for all these categories, is we will have a winner, and we'll have two runners up. So like I said, when I'm saying I'll leave them on the list, I think that's what I mean. So I'm going to move them over here. Let's see, Jason, you got 2 on air. I mean, in Exile,
Mike, you did.
Might fit in.
Mike,
here
you didn't have anything. Well, first of all, Mike, you didn't have anything to say about Devolver?
No.
You console snob.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was going to call me out on my incredible silence during that whole segment there.
You didn't have one good thing to say about it.
I didn't have any bad things to say about it.
Devolver's on console. Ruiner came out on PS4.
So Jeff
good for them.
So Jeff was just about to talk to me about In Exile, and the news I'm just going to spread here, Mike, will make you perk up, because they just announced today on Brian Fargo's Twitter that they are porting over Wasteland 2 Director's Cut to the Switch.
That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense.
Which will be In Exile's first game for the Nintendo Switch, and also brings the first, really meaty, dark, old-fashioned RPG to, not necessarily dark, but old Western RPG to the Switch.
This kind of computer RPG style thing.
Yeah, and so the reason why I'm nominated in Exile is because it's had a fantastic year. In addition to getting some funding from GOTY, it had one of my 2 favorite RPGs of the year, Torment: Tides of Numenera. This is a RPG that's based on the Numenera role-playing game that comes out from Monty Cook. You might recognize the Monty Cook name because he had a huge hand in Planescape, and some other writers have been working on Numenera as well, folks like Colin McCool, who just had his own game come out this last week, Space Dragon for VR. But Numenera is fantastic. You'll go through and you might try not to fight, but as Rowan was saying yesterday, you'll end up fighting. It's got a very rich story, very great character development, excellent characters that you quest with, and it's deep and it's dense. There's a lot of reading, but it's fantastic. They had a nice little VR game, which is called The Mage's Tale, that takes place in the old school Bard's Tale universe, not the one where it had the snarky 2000 and early 2000s Bard's Tale, but the old school 1980s Bard's Tale. That was In Exile's first VR game. It makes you a wizard, and you're sitting there doing first-person wizardry with hand controls, and which spurns into the next part is, they also came out with their Kickstarter for the Bard's Tale 4 this year, and that goes back to the excellent Bard's Tale games of the 80s, bringing it back into that world. So it's just been one good thing after another for In Exile this year.
I think the thing about In Exile is they have figured out how to maximize the return on having a very dedicated audience. It might not be the biggest audience, but they're dedicated and they'll come to these games. So how do we make the most from that? And they're figuring that out through Kickstarters and stuff like that.
Are you saying it's not the size of the audience that matters?
Yeah, it's the motion of the Kickstarter. I don't know.
It's more than that too. It's what we've seen since about 2011, 2012 is that there's room for just about any type of game to be successful outside of the AAA market, and now with crowdfunding, with other sources of funding, with how cheap it is, well, I won't say cheap, but how much more affordable it is to make games with small teams these days, you can do that and make all kinds of games for all kinds of audiences. And if you do it right and do it well, and Exile has been making great games in all of its former iterations for decades, going back to so many of them are from the Interplay days. And
about these 3 companies. So I think we should have this conversation right now. So we have Devolver, In Exile, and Annapurna, maybe all kind of bubbling up from the bottom, building on these dedicated audiences and establishing their voices and their own alternative business models that people seem to really respond to positively. Which one of these 3 do we pick? If we had to pick one, for example, there's no reason that more than one can't make the finals. But if we had to pick one, which one would we put on there for sure?
I'll let you guys fight this one out.
No, Mike, it's actually up to you because all 3 of us picked a different one. Actually, no. I would actually go with Annapurna.
Yeah, that's so funny because I would too.
And I'll explain why. It's reminding me of the upcoming indie movie studios like A24, where they want to do this in a very, auteur way. They want to give authors, they want to put authors, up front and first in a way that I really appreciate that maybe even other companies, Devolver and Exile, aren't doing. These are, these are outfits. They're kind of trying to be rebels in their own way. But Annapurna's doing something I think is distinct in terms of just coming at it from a very artistic way. And that's what I would want to reward here, I think. So,
well, I wouldn't say Devolver's not artistic. It's just
it's not what I mean.
Very different in the way they do their artistic.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think in 2017, the company that I would want to recognize for that is Annapurna.
Yeah, I think like Annapurna is sort of bringing in that kind of interdisciplinary approach to games that we've been seeing more and more. We're seeing a lot more games
you're
that
gonna lose Mike with that big word, interdisciplinary.
Boom! Hey now, I have I listened to an NPR podcast yesterday. I'm very smart.
The word of the day.
But okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, just the fact that they come from a film background. They're a spinoff of a film studio, and that they're bringing in these developers and artists who are, sort of drawing from different inspirations and like sources. Like I just think that sort of marks, the direction that we're going in as an industry. It's not just going to be, it's going to be a more diverse landscape more and more, I think. So it's really, they're part of that watershed moment, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, we should move on to some of these other companies. See, Jason, you and Anthony both picked Sega Atlas. Do you want to?
And we're picking them for very different reasons.
Well, why don't you give us Anthony's reasons?
I feel like I would pick it for both of your reasons.
Okay, then Mike.
Think I know
Mike,
where you're both going.
Talk. Speak, Mike.
Well, yeah. So, the Sega Atlas thing is kind of the key there because Atlas had this real big year of launching Persona 5, right? And Persona 5, really felt like it pushed that series, maybe not super mainstream, but a bit closer there, right? It was nominated at the Game Awards, had a lot of just kind of screen presence there, just kind of treated as this very big deal. Whereas it was kind of this critical darling, and it sort of felt like the coming out party for this series, right? Like, in a way, like, we had the new Final Fantasy not too long ago, but that has kind of strayed from traditional RPG stuff. It almost feels like Persona is, like, the poster child for what JRPGs are.
Right, it's unabashedly a JRPG, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But then on the completely other hand, with Sega, you also had Sonic Forces, which was this really celebrated, really great return to the original 2D platforming style Sonic, with this really interesting development where they just brought in fans to work on it, and it just ended up being really cool, super fun, the best Sonic game since the 90s. They might have made another Sonic game, too. I don't have too much to say about that one. But,
you're allowed to make bad games to still be on this list, for sure. Right?
Sure.
They also made good games.
Well,
wait, real quick. You said the other hand, and you mentioned two things that I would not even have mentioned as my top thing from Sega, which is they are approaching PC gaming in a really thorough way. They are
bingo.
It's not just their Total War games, and they got a couple others. Company Heroes is them, maybe, I can't remember. But they are also bringing some of their classics onto PC, like Vanquish and Bayonetta and things like that. And they're helping with Bayonetta because they published that game originally.
They've also been very good about Switch support very early on, where some of the companies kind of waited a little bit.
Yeah.
But they were there right.
It just seems like they're making a
and
lot of smart decisions.
And let's not forget Endless Space 2, from Amplitude, which they bought a couple years ago.
Right. So
that was an excellent space strategy game that came out this year.
You know what I like about Sega? They're kind of a fun company, really, right now. Like, you think of some of these companies, like your EAs or your Activision or whatever maybe, some of these things you kind of like, oh, they do this, they do that. Sega's just kind of, and I know a lot of it's maybe just perception, but when I think of Sega right now, I'm like, oh yeah, they're fun. Even when they make Sonic Forces, I almost feel like they know it's bad. Like, they're in on the joke in a way. Like, Sega making another bad Sonic game. How cute.
I don't know. I'm almost at a point where, I think Sega has to be in the top 3 here. Has to be in the finalist because of everything we've mentioned. They do seem to get it. They're talking a big game. They're almost like
you're not even talking about Total War this year.
Yeah,
too.
I mean they're almost like the anti-EA with a lot of these acquisitions too. Because think of all the companies they've acquired in the last couple of years, and all of them are still releasing games. They're all active studios.
Oh, their acquisition of Atlas. I know people were worried about the time.
Right.
That has been working absolutely beautifully.
Yeah, Atlas, and then Amplitude, like you mentioned, Jason. That's the company that made Endless Space, right? And then
and then of course the creative several years ago.
Total War. Like exactly. But it's years ago, and it's still going. And it's like a company that now I associate strongly with Sega, where BioWare is a huge EA developer. And I'm still like, when I think of BioWare, I'm still like, well, no, the real BioWare was years ago, before EA, at a point.
So this is one that's going to piss people off, but I think this year shows Sega at its strongest.
Well, no, I don't.
I think it's even better than it was during its console days.
Well, it's definitely the best it's been since the Dreamcast era. I'll say that much.
The Dreamcast era was bad.
Dreamcast era. Well, it was bad for them. It was great for me.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the company and its strength.
There's a degree of difficulty thing here too, isn't there? Though, because like, I think to survive or to thrive as a publisher these days it's really difficult. And the idea that Sega has scrapped for so many years since the Dreamcast era or whatever, and is like clearly figuring it out, and is. And then that's not just people, observers saying it. Like they're saying it themselves. They're figuring out their business model is working. The reason they're making PC games is because they sell. So yeah, I don't know. It's impressive that they are doing it today. Of all the eras of Sega that we can look back on.
Real quick, I just love that like two of the best companies this year are Sega and Nintendo.
Yes.
So Stephanie, you've been awfully quiet. Have you played much of anything from Sega?
No,
you didn't like Sonic Mania, right? And that's okay if you didn't.
Here's the thing, right? When I grew up, I didn't have a console at home, and so I never really played Sonic growing up. I played like all the PC like knockoff versions. Like I played Jazz Jackrabbit.
He's been showing up in the news again.
Yeah, so like when I hear that, I'm like, oh, my childhood. But like I have no real strong emotional connection to the Sonic franchise.
Mike,
Stephanie,
Mike,
real quick. Me that you're
real quick. I think I want to
ahead.
translate what Stephanie said. She said Sonic was never good. And she said it right.
She
said Sonic was never part of her childhood.
Mike Minotti, Sonic
We're
was
not getting
never
into
good.
that. No, you don't want to go down that road.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
The memes are good.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, you actually do reference an NPR podcast to your copy here, Mike.
Oh yeah. This NPR podcast is coming up multiple times.
What podcast is it? I have to know real quick. I'm sorry. I don't want to derail.
It was Brain Talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I use it as justification for why the Atari was never good, ironically.
Hidden Brain, come on.
Hidden Brain, whatever. Brain Talk, something to do with the
It's like Brain Talk is the generic NPR name of the podcast. Like if you're just like, we're Brain Talk or whatever. All right, Mike, we keep interrupting.
Steph, you always tell me you're secretly weeb trash. How did you not play Persona 5, like the ultimate weeb trash game?
It's here in my house. I just haven't had a chance to devote 200 hours to it.
It's more like 90 hours, maybe. I think that was my that is the ultimate weeb trash game. You can't claim that title for your own unless you dive into that one.
I know. I'm gonna have to complete my transformation and finish Persona 5.
Exactly.
This isn't my final form yet. I need to get there.
Okay, yeah. So I guess we should dig into some of these other game companies. Bethesda, Jason, do you want to touch on them real quick?
Yeah. So this has been a very quiet year for Bethesda in regards to big games. But you take a look. They're putting Skyrim on the Switch, which I've been playing daily since it came out, and it's become I'm just engrossed in it as I was the first time around. You've got Skyrim in VR and Fallout in VR. You've got them putting out an excellent card set and an excellent story expansion to Elder Scrolls Legends. They continue to build on their successes with the Elder Scrolls Online. So, they're just shepherding everything very well, building on things in between, keeping their franchises relevant as other games come out so people don't forget about them. And it's just been just very quiet. Like, and then of course here at the end of the year, they make this whole thing about, oh yeah, we're still making single player games, and you take a look at that, and all that stuff is single player. If you wanted to make it that way, I mean, no one needs to play The Elder Scrolls Online with friends. You can always play it by yourself.
Of all the companies here, Bethesda's the one I'm most conflicted about on this list, and the reason is they have had several great games this year and last year, and several of those have not performed in terms of sales. And so I almost, and that's not me saying, these games have to sell to be successful to me. That's not what I mean. It means, what I'm saying is, it feels almost like I'd be giving them this because I pity them, because they're doing what I want them to do, and I want to recognize that even though they're not succeeding. It feels like I want them to not even be in the top 3 on this, come back in 2018 with very similar, high quality games that they have figured out how to sell in a way that people will come back to and give more money to.
But you're just talking about really one game, Wolfenstein.
No, I mean, no.
And I don't think Prey didn't sell well either, right?
No, and Dishonored, the Dishonored DLC did not sell well, and
Dishonored 2 didn't
Dishonored
sell
2
well.
last year didn't sell well. This is all part of a trend. These are the games. All those games we mentioned are immersive sims. This has led people to say, immersive sims aren't financially feasible. But I think it's single player narrative games, which is one of the reasons it was exciting to see Bethesda do that video at the Game Awards, saying, we're gonna.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if you've got live service games that are making money and doing well, like The Elder Scrolls Online, does it matter?
I don't know. I mean, I
don't know if Elder Scrolls Online is doing well enough to
maybe
write
one or two of these
failures of slight failures. Also, I played that expansion and was not impressed, just on a personal level. But that's
right.
That's just
I bounce off all the immersive.
I'm gonna throw back that's just you when you try to bad talk Mario later.
Well, that really is just him.
Okay, I never said it's bad. I'm just saying it's not 100 out of 100.
We will get to Mario.
Oh, it's easy.
We will get to Mario.
100 out of 100 ever.
We will get to Mario.
I thought it was just
okay. No,
it's
not happening now.
I need to get another beer.
This is going to be such a long week. Okay. All right. Where are we? Okay. So Bethesda. Okay. I'm just hesitant to put them on this list because there are companies we would have to start knocking off. Because, I mean, I'm just going to move them over now because I think the argument would have to be why Nintendo would get replaced by someone else, at least in the top 3. Their year was just too strong all around.
Jeff, getting close to that 30-minute mark. We're still on topic.
No,
one.
I know for sure. So let's.
Well, we can always just make it one topic.
No, we got to get through these.
I believe in us.
We'll do it. We'll be fine. So, actually, Mike, why don't you give us Blizzard? Give us the high points on that, and then I'll
real
do Ubisoft.
Quick. Well, I mean, I'm not. This has basically been a live services year for Blizzard. I kind of put it down there because, as a devil's advocate, I'm really. If I could endorse one, it would have been Nintendo, but I think you already took that one because it was obvious. But they did. I think Hearthstone maybe had its best post-launch year ever. The first 2 expansions were really good. The first one in Goro was fantastic. It was one of the best metas the game ever had. The Lich King was also really fun. The Death Knights were good. We're pretty early into the 3rd expansion. It just came out, Kobolds and Catacombs. But the single-player campaign they get brought, which I may or may not be playing as we record this, is super fun. It's the best single-player content the game has had since it launched. It's kind of opened my eyes into the potential for single-player content in the game. I haven't even really played that much, like, multiplayer. I've just been playing this mode. It's just super interesting how it's like this roguelike card game thing. So super fun.
I love the tribute that it is to Dungeons and Dragons and every role-playing game that came before Warcraft.
It's amazing how well Blizzard can handle maintenance years, where it can just maintain and still really thrive.
But it wasn't. But they did more than that too. They totally revamped.
Heroes of the Storm was big,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a huge revamp.
Totally. I mean, that's like, other companies update their games all the time, and it's not as big of a deal as when Blizzard does it, because Blizzard just does it with such panache. I'll do Ubisoft in a similar quick fashion.
Well, don't forget their work on Overwatch this year.
Yeah, I think that's all encompassed in what my
Overwatch has been a little bit more almost problematic, I would say. It's been good in terms of content, but there have been some missteps. Notably, the Mercy rework initially was an absolute like dismal a failure. They tried to nerf her and made her like way more powerful to the point where all the other healers were kind of unplayable for a bit, and that was a little rough. And they did fix it to their credit, but for like a couple months or however it was kind of miserable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a sophomore year for that game. It'll get through it. It'll be fine.
Sure.
So Ubisoft.
And don't forget the Necromancer for Diablo 3.
I forgot it.
Yeah,
to be
totally.
honest.
Oh god, it was so much fun.
No, they need to do something. They need to do next Diablo now because I think Diablo 3 is worn out.
Ubisoft is on this list because.
Excuse me, Jeff. I'm not finished. Yes, it's good to be the king. What was great about the Necromancer was, adding a new class and still making the game feel different and fresh to me, even though I've played it through several times by now.
Yeah, I mean, again...
See, I had the opposite feeling where I started and I was just like, I can't with this game anymore. It's had its time and I'm kind of done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all encompassed in just Blizzard doing these things well for at least most people, even if not everything hits for everyone. Okay, no, for real, getting to Ubisoft because we do have to pick a winner here very soon. I put them on here because it just seems like they are figuring it out, and it is live services. Their games, that Ubisoft, there's the Ubisoft model. They make their games across a bunch of studios, and they all have a very similar feeling a lot of times. And what they do is they change genres or perspectives, so you're doing a lot of the same stuff from first person or third person, or in a sci-fi setting or a fantasy setting or whatever. They have found a way to really build up communities around each one of their games in a strong enough way that even when they start screwing up or they start to fade, they seem to always seem to find a way to revive it. And it's because they have like strong communication with their fans. It's because they have weekly content updates coming out, and then they have bigger, more substantial updates coming out about every quarter or so. This has led to Rainbow Six Siege having 25 million players, or at least registered users. And then, that's a game that when it came out, it kind of came and went, and for good reason. It wasn't the most fully fledged out experience at the time. And now throughout this year, we've seen similar patterns with For Honor and Rainbow Six or Ghost Recon Wildlands, and who knows, Assassin's Creed did really well from the start, and maybe it could have a similar progression as well. But
I'm impressed with the diversity of games Ubisoft has released this year, right? Like you had your Assassin's Creed, and that was nice after the year off, and For Honor and Wildlands. But you also had Mario and Rabbids, this really weird tactical game with Mario and the Rabbids, and it was way better than it had any right to be. And you also had the South Park RPG, which was super fun.
They still take risks, and they get away from their core. Their core things. It just seems like they are always experimenting, so they know they're going to have to be changing up what they're doing in the next 5 to 6 years. So they're always looking at the horizon, and they're good at it.
And they're doing this all while at the same time looking over their shoulders and making sure that they're still independent and not being the subject of a hostile takeover by
exactly.
Vivendi.
I mean that's a real thing.
And we know how that we know the bad things that happen when Vivendi gets involved with
exactly. And I mean, I think that the bigger point here about Ubisoft, and we'll move on to Nintendo, is just that is a company that is unique to the point where if you do kick out the people that kind of built it up as it is built today, the Guillemot family, it probably wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't work. Mike, I've been talking a lot. Why don't you take Nintendo?
Nintendo is just, I don't know. It seems so easy for me here. Right? The Switch, we found out today, has now sold 10 million, or was it 12 million? Something.
It's 10 million in 9 months. Yep.
10 million systems.
10 million systems.
I don't know how many times I asked you guys not to refer to these damn things as units.
I didn't say units.
Look, people know what we mean when we say units.
This is my system.
We're not a retail blog.
This is my unit.
I think total lifetime sales for the Wii U in its whole 4 or 5 years were 14 million. So it's almost there already. So they just absolutely completely turned that around, which is really impressive and really neat. And then they also released two of the highest, maybe the two highest reviewed games of the year in Zelda and Mario. And it also does mean something that those are Zelda and Mario games. They're two most important franchises. They released 2 games. They're slam dunks. and they are positioned perfectly. You have the Zelda game as the launch title, then you also have the other one, Mario, coming in right in the beginning of the fourth quarter, right? Like, that is just absolutely ideal, I imagine, if you want to do this stuff. And then outside of that, their mobile efforts moving forward, I think Fire Emblem was probably their best thing yet. They just launched the Animal Crossing game. The SNES Classic Edition was fantastic, and their supply of it has been much better than the NES Classic, right? So just in terms of, like, launching a new system, especially, like, this really, like, we almost haven't seen this before, this weird system kind of coming out while the other generation is still happening, but having it be a complete success, releasing a lot of great games, and even beyond those two, you know, I mean, Splatoon 2 was fun. ARMS, maybe it's not the best thing ever, but as an early kind of launch window game, that worked out really well.
They also had
Mario
something
Rabbids.
new every month, though. Like, they had something coming every
It felt
month.
like it, right?
They really did. I mean, if
like,
you look back, I think they had at least one major published game from Nintendo, and then maybe, like, once, one of those months was maybe, like, a partner, but it was, like, a big partner. I can't remember. No, but because
like a Ubisoft.
Yeah, but I mean, Nintendo published.
Yeah, they had a lot of.
Yeah. Or no, Ubisoft did.
Or
Yeah.
You're right. That was the game.
Yeah, they had a lot of indies
Exactly.
too. Like, they had a lot of really great indie titles.
The
in
indie support has been fantastic for the Switch, and it's becoming, like, the new kind of go-to home for indie
It's not just
games.
like the support's been fantastic, the results have been fantastic. Those games are selling and making a lot of money on the Switch.
Right, and it's
like,
it's whether they're kind of bringing old favorites like Stardew Valley or Shovel Knight, or some of these new things like Golf Story, super fun. Like, that system is just, like, built for indie games. It's fantastic.
Then you have a retro component too. Blaster Master is fantastic.
Blaster Master, and the other one that really impressed me was Dragon Boy or Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Curse. I thought that was super fun. That was
these are all games that you could tell were working. They were coming out for other systems. They were coming out for PC, and then the indies saw a chance to work with Nintendo, and Nintendo apparently reached out to them and was very aggressive about being friendly and welcoming and saying, hey, we want you on here for real. We are being very serious. We want your games on our system. And all the indies responded because all of them grew up playing Nintendo, and it has paid off in a huge way. I'm sure we're going to get to a point where there is a too much, we get the problem where there are too many games on the system. Maybe some people feel like we're there already, but it's not really an actual problem. It feels like one of those good things to have happen.
Well, the question will be, how does this sustain the success next year?
I almost feel like next year can't be as good as
this
this year, because the first year for this system was fantastic. Like, next year it's going to be like the Kirby game, the Yoshi game. Maybe they'll finally port Smash Bros.
They just announced
maybe
Bayonetta 3 is going to be like one of those Mario and Luigi level games, I think, or Mario and Rabbids level games. So they have stuff coming. They're already making announcements for next year, but we'll see.
And don't forget that there could be something special, something different that you don't know of. That could be ported from another system or from the PC. And, it could be a really good indie or two, too.
Yeah, but that's next year. Let's stick on 2017. I think if you just look back, I would still want to give this one to Nintendo, just overall. But before...
Yeah, it was just such a good year. It's like, in like the annals of... good years. This is up there.
They did so many things right that even when they made their mess ups, like I don't think Animal Crossing Pocket,
the app
exactly. Yeah, those things we could just they don't even come up on the radar anymore because they're just like, who cares? Yeah, they screwed that up, but everything else is going so well. Before we declare Nintendo the winner, I want to say are there any of these companies that aren't in the finalist over here among Sega, Annapurna, and Nintendo that we would want to replace with one of the ones that we haven't put on the finalists? No.
Those three seem pretty good to me.
I would have a hard... I mean, maybe Ubisoft, but I wouldn't knock off Sega for them, and I feel like I want Annapurna on the list for the reasons stated earlier. Nintendo, I think, is staying. Okay. I think that those will be our three finalists, and any argument against Nintendo being number one on this?
No, they did everything right this year.
Yeah, they kind of killed it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I think Nintendo did such a great job with sort of helping with the couch co-op revival too. Like, there's so many great co-op games on the Switch, and I thought the Switch was going to be like overhyped, but then it just turned out to be such a great console,
just a
you know, and
smart
like it won me
implementation.
over.
Absolutely. And I think that's the story of a lot of people. All right.
I almost play it every day.
Yeah, same.
Really.
Me too.
It's great.
Me too, especially since Skyrim came out. I played it on transit today.
All right.
Yeah.
I wish I could take public transit.
Los Angeles.
I live in Ohio. I take a car everywhere.
That's the same way it is in LA, though. So yeah.